Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Medical Fitness Podcast. I'm Jeff Young, and in this episode, my co host, Dr. Thomas Hammett, and I speak with Kelli Brower, a licensed physician assistant who has transitioned to operating her own successful fitness and health coaching business. The podcast is brought to you by the Medicine Rehab and Fitness Institute and JY Kinesiology LLC, both of which are dedicated to medical fitness education and building the bridge between medicine, rehab, and fitness. You can learn more at mrfinstitute.org. The purpose of our podcast is to provide you with principle and evidence-based content on all things related to exercise science, strength and conditioning, medical fitness, and building the bridge between medicine, rehab, and fitness. In this episode, Kelli gives great insight into how she goes about designing primarily weight loss programs for her clients, many of whom have gotten caught up with the unsuccessful yo-yo dieting, quick fixes, and other unsustainable methods. She also discusses topics like how she addresses lack of adherence if it becomes an issue, why tracking fats, carbohydrates, and protein, at least initially, is so important in setting up a successful weight loss journey, the importance of progressive resistance training as part of a weight loss program, addressing common misconceptions around weight loss, and views on the body weight set point theory, which is a theory that proposes our bodies have a set point that it gravitates towards, which may make it harder to successfully lose weight. This was a great episode, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, hey everyone, welcome to the next episode of the Medical Fitness Podcast. I'm joined by my friend, colleague, and co-host, Dr. Thomas Hammett. But before we get to him, I want to welcome our special guest, Kelli Brower. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Kelli
Yes.
Brower, who is a former practicing physician assistant, but we're going to get into all that in a second. But the first thing I want to do is welcome you, Kelli, to the podcast. We're excited to have you here and excited for our upcoming discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And Thomas, as always, love having you here as a co-host, and looking forward to getting a discussion and including all your great insights and questions as well.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you and Kelli today.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. Kelli, like I said, the former practicing physician assistant, would love, and we would love for you to start by telling us a little bit about your background and what led you out of your medical practice, which is interesting, and towards starting your own fitness and health coaching business. So feel free to expand on that as much as you want to.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm obviously Kelli. Like he said, I used to be, well, I guess I still am a PA, but I'm not currently practicing. Just kind of as some background as myself, when I was working as a PA, I started in orthopedic surgery. So I did that for about 2 years. I kind of switched jobs every 2 years as a PA and worked in a different specialty, but I was in ortho surgery first, and then I went to general surgery and then pain management and then to vascular surgery. So that's kind of my journey as a PA. Now, working as a PA obviously was a great experience, but it never felt like the thing I was supposed to be doing. So even when I was in school, it was like, you're supposed to go to school, right? It was the thing I wanted to do because but I always had a passion for fitness and nutrition. So back in college, I majored in nutrition sciences. So I always loved, I grew up a gymnast. I always, loved the fitness nutrition world. But at that time, I had no idea how to make that, a career. So went to PA school, which I'm still glad that I did. I learned a lot. I enjoyed my time working. But I still always, as a PA, had kind of this wish of being able to work in the fitness world. I just didn't know how to make it happen. So my last job, I worked in vascular surgery, but the surgeon I worked with also had a passion for preventative medicine. And so we kind of tried to combine the two. As a practice, it didn't work great, but I tried to combine it in working as a PA with those patients. And so, kind of diving into my own fitness journey, I've always been active and into nutrition. But in PA school, and I know in medical school too, I didn't go to medical school, but they don't teach a lot about nutrition. I had a nutrition course that was just basic nutrition, right? I knew everything that they taught me in that course. So it's not taught a lot, first of all. So I wanted to be able to bring more of that knowledge, into the practice somehow and into the medical world. And in my own journey, fitness journey, I felt like I was in a point where I was frustrated and felt like I got stuck in times of restriction and cardio and thinking I had to try all these crazy restrictive diets and do too much cardio and work out twice a day. And so when I finally hired my own coach and learned the right way to do it and about macronutrients and about weight training and how to do it correctly without being miserable and starving, it was like super life-changing for me. So it made me really dive in and just learn as much as possible while I was still working as a PA. I was working with my own coach and just kind of like learning as much as I could. And then when COVID happened, the doctor I worked for ended up retiring at the end of 2020. He actually called me on Christmas Eve to tell me I wouldn't have a job after the holiday. I was like, oh, great.
Yeah.
But so in the time it was, obviously didn't seem like a great thing, but my coach actually, who I was working with as my fitness coach, her name's Erin Diamond. I don't know if you've heard her name, but she now has a business teaching coaches, fitness coaches, how to grow their business. And so when my surgeon retired, it was in December and they had a program starting, I think in March. And, in my head, it was like, I either try to get another job as a PA because, this job is gone. So I got to start over somewhere, or I really try to go for it and make my dream happen. And obviously, like discussed it with my husband, he was completely on board. Thank goodness. I went for it. I took the mentorship and it really just, it thankfully I took the mentorship because it really helped me kick off my business and helped me be able to grow. And it's been great. There's ups and downs. It's hard to be an entrepreneur too, but that's kind of how I got my business started. And it's been able to take off ever since. And it's just been completely life-changing for me. So that's kind of how I got out of it, out of working as a PA. And I have 3 kids. I've always wanted to be able to be home with my kids. And now I'm able to do that and still do what I have a huge passion for. So, my own fitness journey and the things that I went through and then learned the right way to do it has made it such a huge passion to teach other women how to do that as well.
Thanks for sharing that, Kelly. I have a couple thoughts just based on what you shared. One being that your background, we didn't talk about this before we hopped on, but your background, orthopedic surgery, pain management, vascular surgery, you must have dealt with a lot of PTs, I would guess.
Yeah.
Which that is just kind of one of those cool things. The other being that you mentioned something about at one point being in a position where you were working with your vascular surgeon to try to combine prevention in some way. And I'm curious if you could just share a little bit more about what that meant and what that looked like.
Yeah. He actually paid for me to take a course through, oh man, I'm gonna remember the name, the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. So he paid for me to take that course, which was great. It just, he kind of ended up closing his clinic pretty soon after that. So it benefited me obviously, but it didn't really benefit his clinic. But, we really tried because we worked, I think it was harder too, but we really tried. We worked with a lot of older patients who had vascular disease, who had, we had to do amputations and things like that because of their habits, right? Smoking, not eating healthy, just so really trying to teach people about Mediterranean diet and, the preventative things of exercise, trying to quit smoking. So we're trying to integrate that more. And then, we were trying to go a little bit deeper with it too. We just didn't have enough time. He ended up retiring. COVID kind of hit his clinic. And so we tried to go deeper with it, but we couldn't.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I was just curious, and it sounds like not long enough of an experience to have like maybe a ton to share other than the nutrition side. It's really cool that you got that experience and that someone was thinking that way in the vascular surgery world. I think in medicine, we use a lot of excuses about being too far downstream and seeing people too late. When you see people with amputations, you kind of think like, oh, it's probably too late for these people. And to me, truly, that's it's an excuse for not addressing something that we could be addressing. And just cool that you were able to do some of that. But I don't want to focus too much on that, because I want to focus on you and your incredible business. And one of the things we wanted to focus on today, because it's a major topic in the media right now, is the topic of weight loss. And a major focus of your coaching business is around weight loss. So I'd love to just get into that and talk a little bit more about it. And maybe start with how you initially approach the subject of weight loss with your clients.
Okay. The most important thing I try to get is their history of, obviously what their goal is, how much weight they need to lose, but also what they have done in the past to try to lose the weight, because that's really going to determine kind of where we go from there. So we work with a lot of clients that have been through the yo-yo dieting, unfortunately the media teaches women quick fix, kind of super restrictive things. We want results just like that, right? If we don't get our results in 6 weeks, we're upset about it. So trying to dive into their history of what they've done, and then, honestly, what we do next depends on that. So it's like, if someone comes to us that's chronically under eating, trying to help them heal their relationship with food as we work with them too. So the mental piece of it is huge, but like I said, if they come from a history of yo-yo dieting, we I don't know if you guys have heard this term, but we try to put clients through a reverse diet. Have you guys heard that before? Do you know what that is?
So I've heard of it. I'd love to share, or if you could share what you specifically mean by that when you're doing that with a client.
Yeah. Okay. And sorry, I feel like maybe I go off in different directions. So hopefully I'm answering your question at the same time.
Do your thing.
Okay. So, ideally baseline when I initially talk to a client, like I said, we talk to a lot of women that are just stuck in this quick fix thing, because again, it's not their fault. It's what the world throws at us, that, we need to starve ourselves and do more cardio to get the body that we want. Yet that's what most women are doing, and they're still stuck. So our goal really is to get them out of that. Okay. So, if someone does come to us though, that's been in a yo-yo dieting history and is under eating, like we have a lot of clients that come to us that I always have our clients track their food for us for 7 days, so I can see how many calories they're consuming. Because if they're eating 1,200 versus 2,500 in a day, we have a whole different thing we got to do with them. So we do get a lot of clients that are eating 1,200 or honestly less. And so when that is the case, I'm not just going to continue to starve them, right? If they're not losing weight and they're already under eating, we have to work on some other things before fat loss is really going to even be a goal. And that is getting their metabolism up. So taking them through something called a reverse diet, which is essentially the opposite of dieting. We're going to slowly increase their calories so their metabolism can come up. And we do that in a slow process to get their food up without just gaining a bunch of weight as we increase their food. But as we increase their food, we're going to increase their metabolism. And now we can, not only get their food up, but help them feel better, sleep better, have more energy, heal their relationship with food, and even balance out their hormones, thyroid health. There's lots of other things that just eating more food helps with. So a lot of times we have to start with just teaching women to eat more food, because again, the media kind of teaches us we have to starve ourselves. And then if that's not the case, if we don't have to start in a reverse diet, that's great. A lot of clients we do, and that's okay. But we want to teach women essentially how to lose weight eating the most amount of food possible, instead of just tanking our calories, at the beginning, tanking our metabolism and plateauing, but also being miserable and hungry. We want to teach them how to fuel their body, how to eat as much food as possible and still see fat loss. So we generally teach our clients how to track macronutrients. So how to keep track of their carbs, their proteins, and their fats. And I like to explain building or changing our physique, kind of like baking a cake. And some people look at me like, what are you talking about? But if we bake a cake, we got to have flour, sugar, and eggs. Okay. And if we have too much flour and not enough eggs, it's going to be dry. Okay. But if we have too many eggs and not enough flour, it's probably going to be too wet. Right. So we want to get the composition correct. It's the same thing with building our body. And so I think a lot of people get the idea that there's something magical out there, right? Like there's a shake or a pill, or like I just have to do this and then my body's going to, change the way we want it to, where it truly is a science to change our body. So we have to have the right amount of proteins, carbs, and fats to build our physique, to build muscle, and to burn more fat. So, just like the cake thing, if we have too much fat and not enough protein, we're not going to see the same body composition changes as if we have that good balance of all three. That makes sense?
Absolutely.
I have a quick question for you. How
Yeah.
about adherence? Like what are your, since adherence is obviously I mean even for people who are paying for the service that you provide, it can still be tough um to get people to adhere. It's obviously a major problem just across the board. So, what are your tricks of the trade? What type of things do you do to try to improve and increase adherence?
Yeah. And so, exactly. That is a big thing. We can have someone sign up and man, they just nail their macros right off the bat. And other times it takes women months and months to be able to actually hit their numbers. And, we're going to coach each person differently through that time, but obviously adherence is important to get results. So, again, it depends on where they are. Sometimes we just start with just nutrition and maybe a step goal and keep out the exercise component until they feel a little bit better. But also in terms of nutrition, sometimes we break it down further. Instead of tracking all three macros, maybe we just focus on a protein goal to hit and maybe a calorie goal. Or sometimes, like even further, it's just, let's focus on this protein goal, and maybe that helps you not overeat the other things, right? Because we're increasing our protein. So we try to break it down so they have smaller goals if they don't feel comfortable tracking all three macros like off the bat, because it can feel hard and overwhelming and confusing at first, which is why it's great to have a coach walk you through that. But we try to break it down when we can to make it simpler and put it in, baby steps. And, I think the important thing to explain with the reason that, well, there's lots of reasons, but a big reason for macro tracking is because we want to teach women as we do it, instead of just like, oh, here's a meal plan, right? I lose the weight on the meal plan, but then what do I do afterwards, right? We want them to know how to do it forever. So when they're done working with us, they know how to keep the weight off. Okay, so with macros, it really teaches them about the foods that they're eating, what's a protein, what's a carb, what's a fat, what's two of them, what's all three, so that eventually it's up here. Our goal is to be able to transition them to intuitive eating at some point, so they don't have to track macros for the rest of their life, but it's going to teach them how to eat. And then, sometimes it's simpler, as in let's just teach them how to build a plate and what a balanced plate looks like. So we try to break it down when it feels overwhelming for some of those clients.
I actually have another related question, if you don't mind, because you actually kind of already answered it, but maybe if you could just expand on a little bit. So I was going to ask you before you kind of already answered it. Uh, what about adherence to tracking? Because as I'm sure you have a lot of naysayers and haters out there who will be like, no, we can't get people don't do this. They almost have like this all or nothing attitude. Since people aren't going to keep tracking, why even have them start? And yet, but I totally agree with you that it's a great educational tool and a great way to get them started. So I was going to ask you, what's your view on do you make them keep doing this? Is this a lifelong thing? But I can't remember your exact words, but it's, you alluded to the fact that you will eventually wean people off. But, can you expand on that a little bit? And like, what would you say if I was a naysayer and I said to you, no, we shouldn't do this at all. Like, do you have a view on that side of the fence and how you would respond to something like that?
Yeah. So, a lot of people are worried about how many calories they burn in a day, right? But they have no idea. On the flip side, they have no idea how many they're consuming. And so it's like,
Yeah.
why does it matter how many you're burning, right? So tracking really gives us an idea, because we get a lot of women that come to us that are like, I'm eating healthy. I don't know why I'm not seeing any weight loss. And I always say to them, that's great that you're eating healthy. Like, I love that. But we can still eat healthy, but not be eating correctly to change our physique. We can still be eating it's very common that women are overeating fat and under eating protein. Protein's the least fun food to eat, and fat's hidden in everything, essentially. So, it doesn't always sound fun. There's people that love it. It's like a game of Tetris. They figure out how to fit foods into their macros. Other people are like, no, I'm not tracking anything. And it's just like, if I have no idea what you're eating or how much you're eating, I don't know how to change what you're doing. I don't know what we need to change to better see
Right.
results.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. And so again, like as they do it more and more, it becomes second nature. It really does. Like I always tell people, eventually you're going to look at a potato and be like, that potato has 30 grams of carbs just because you're used to
Yes,
seeing what that looks like. And that's where
love
we
it.
get you so that, we can slowly like, okay, this week we're only going to track 3 or 4 days, right? And the other days we're going to eat intuitive and just kind of like see how that goes. And we slowly kind of wean them off of it.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, because Kelly, you shared a ton of really good stuff there. When you're initially approaching someone who is interested in weight loss, you actually check first to make sure that people are eating enough calories. And when you have identified whether they are or not, maybe people go on a reverse diet, maybe they don't. But after that, the next step is to take a closer look into macros. And potentially that means, well, it sounds like almost always that means doing a food log. But then after that, your coaching is going to be based around their specific need and maybe looking at all 3 macros, maybe breaking it down into smaller bits so that people have, if there's trouble with adherence kind of stuff, as Jeff was asking about, even just tracking one of those macros over time. But really, initially, it sounds like a lot of your focus is on nutrition and what people are putting into their bodies.
Yeah. I mean, for sure. It's definitely a huge piece of it for sure.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more. Once you get past the nutrition side of this, or if there is more nutrition that we haven't covered, please feel free to go deeper than you have already. But what are some other recommendations that you provide to people who are going down the weight loss journey?
Yeah. Um, I feel like we can always get deeper into nutrition, but it's kind of more an individualized basis. But we really help clients. I say tracking macros, and again, that can feel overwhelming, but I always say we want to hold your hand through that process and really teach you how to do that. We look at their foods that they're eating. I always tell them not to judge you. We just want to help you. So when I'm looking at their food, I can also help them. Like if they're going way over their carbs or fat or whatever, if I look at their food log, I can help them, actually look at what they need to change instead of just say, eat more vegetables or whatever. I can look at specifically what they're eating, be like, let's eat more of this and less of this, or let's take this out. So that's, we dive deep into them with their nutrition. But another huge piece of it, is movement and is weight training, resistance training with progressive overload, lifting heavy. I always make sure to emphasize that. Because again, a lot of things teach women to do a bunch of HIIT cardio or just cardio in general. And I think we're getting better at it, but a lot of women are afraid of the weights. And so really teaching them that that's what's going to change their physique, but we have to pair it with a nutrition piece in order to grow the muscle tissue. So I always tell them, again, a lot of what the media pushes and what is out there is the yo-yo diets that are teaching us to overdo cardio and undereat. But most women want to look toned. And if we want to look toned, we have to build muscle, and we can't build muscle tissue when we're not fueling our body. So the two pieces definitely go hand in hand. They have to support each other. But weight training, resistance training is a huge piece of that. So we also build workouts for clients that they can do in home or at the gym, depending on what they have access to.
What you just entered my world, and before I ask you a question, I want to give you a little bit of background. Literally, just a couple hours ago, um, I had a presentation for the National Strength and Conditioning Association's Personal Trainers National Conference that was pre-recorded months ago, and it just went live today, literally just a few hours ago. So I was like watching, my presentation and then I had to do some Q&A afterwards. And one of the things that I talked about in my presentation like relates exactly to what you just said. I start off my presentation that saying that when I graduated from Penn State way back in 96, I was involved in what at the time was the longest strength and conditioning study that had ever been performed. And it was done for the United States Army, and the subjects were women between the ages of 18 and 32. Purpose of the study was basically to see if women could make enough basically strength and aerobic gains to justify their position in combat roles. But that aside, they had 5 groups, but the 3 like weight training groups were those with training with high reps and light loads. like 8 to 12 and moderate loads, and then 3 to 8 reps and heavy loads. And I was involved in all aspects of training and testing for what we called the power group in the 3 to 8 loading zone. And since they were randomly thrown in that group, they were upset about, they knew that there's actually a very long study. It wasn't just a couple months, and so they were worried about bulking up. And so and then of course that didn't happen, right? And there's obviously way more to it. This isn't about me in the study. I just wanted to at least introduce that because we are really on the same page. And I am a huge believer in that we can't be afraid of the light weights. And so that then leads to my question. So how do you go about your exercise prescription, and how do you overcome this, the apprehension and in some cases just legit fear of
Yeah.
lifting with heavy weights? And what is, if you can give just some general insight as to what the weight training part of your exercise prescription might look like?
Yeah. So one thing I try to do is really share my own journey to help them, help my viewers that are watching me, watching my journey, see, right now I'm eating almost 300 grams of carbs per day, and I resistance train 6 days a week, and I do no cardio. And so I feel like, because a lot of women come to me and they're like, I want to look like you, or I want your arms, or, and so really trying to share, like, this is what I'm doing. And obviously, again, on a side note, every person's journey looks different, right? But I really try to share what I'm doing in hopes to help them see that. Now, it does take continued coaching. A huge part of this is mindset and getting over the fear of eating carbs or eating more food or resistance training. That is just a constant thing. And it just depends on the client in terms of what's been, ingrained in their mind and their head. Some people take more coaching around that than others. But I think, the results that they get do speak for themselves. But a lot of women get afraid, or we've had women say to us in the past that they've tried resistance training, they try weight training, and they just bulk up, they get way too big, and so they stop doing it. And so my combat to that is, well, what was your nutrition like? And most of the time they're not paying attention, right? They're just like, I don't know, I was hungrier, right? So I was probably eating more, but they don't know where those calories were coming from. And so they might have been putting themselves in a surplus, but not really realizing that. And that's generally the case, right? Because again, I also like to tell women out there too, and sorry, I'm saying this to guys, but I've been trying to build the muscles in my butt for years. So I know that it takes time, right? Like this is a journey. So really trying to show them my journey. I also have, 4 coaches that work with me as well. And so them showing their journey, we all try to, we all are doing the same thing that we're coaching our clients to do. So just constantly, supporting them and coaching them through that mindset part of it, because it is a huge piece of it. So in terms of us building workouts for them, we have an app that they have on their phone, and so we can build customized workouts for them in our app. So in the app, they'll show a calendar, it'll tell them what workouts to do that week. They'll see a video of the exercise, it'll tell them how many sets and reps to do. They can log their workouts in there and put their reps and the amount of weight that they used. That way we can also see that to keep them accountable too, because I always say, we're generally stronger than we think we are. So this is why I have a coach for myself, because it applies to me as well. It's not just them. I'm not perfect because I'm a coach, right? I still have someone coaching me because I need it. Because I know I'm generally stronger than I think I am too. And I do the same thing of not pushing myself as much in the gym. So we have the app for them where we build it for them. Sometimes we have them send us, videos of themselves so we can assess form, make sure everything looks okay.
Do you like, from a programming standpoint, will you include some phases or sessions or whatever in some higher repetition ranges and then work them down? Or how will you go about from like a repetition range standpoint?
Yeah.
Since
So I guess it depends on where they're at, like in their, if they've weight trained or not in before. Because we do get a lot of women that are kind of stuck in the, like, I weight train, I use 5 pounds. And so trying to get them out of that, out of that mindset of, okay, we're going to get you some heavier weights to start with. So sometimes, if they're a complete beginner, let's say they haven't lifted weights at all. Sometimes or they're not exercising. We might just start with body weight and then resistance bands and then kind of increase, to the weights, starting with probably higher reps. And then as they get more advanced, we generally are like, okay, like lifting heavier and decreasing the rep range. But I always try to emphasize too, like your last 2 to 3 reps should be, we should be struggling to get those reps in. And if we're not, we need to increase that weight. So it kind of depends on how advanced they are in terms of where their rep range is. But if we're getting more experienced lifter, we're going to increase their weights and decrease their reps. Try to get that, that more progressive overload.
Okay.
So Kelli, you mentioned both lifting weights will make me bulky and eating less calories will help me lose weight. And I'm curious what other common misconceptions you have or currently maybe experience on a regular basis about exercise and weight loss, or really just anything in general related to weight loss around the misconceptions you might hear.
By the way, most people looking for the services of a fitness professional are really just looking for information on how to get started on the right path, not to pay for training sessions every week for months or years on end. For the 60 to 70% of people with chronic disease and or joint pain, they're also looking for someone who can help them develop a clinically safe, individualized exercise program that takes their conditions into consideration. If you're interested in getting yourself, or for clinicians, your patients, started on a safe, cost-friendly medical fitness program, you can find more information about the virtual services we offer at mrfinstitute.org/services. We staff only degreed kinesiologists and exercise physiologists and will work with your healthcare providers in the design of your exercise program. For the clinicians listening in, you can add this virtual service as a reduced cost option for your patients. Check out our website and send us an email, and we'll give you the details about this unique and much needed service.
Yeah. I would say, the most common is that I need to eat less, carbs are bad. I have to cut out all sugar. Just super restrictive mindset. Like if I want to get results, it's got to be kind of an all or nothing mindset. Of I'm either all in or I'm all off, right? And I always tell clients we want to teach you how to live in the middle, how to live in the gray area. I like to call it the gray area, because we're not going to always be all on or all off. And if we are, we're going to continue in that yo-yo dieting cycle. So I think that people think they have to be all on or all off. That, more cardio is better, right? And that just eating less, decreasing carbs, maybe cutting out all the foods that you love, are probably the biggest misconceptions that we deal with. So trying to teach them to live in the middle, balance is okay, right? And that we can still enjoy foods that we love, and we can make those fit our macros, and we can move on with our life. Even if we had a donut for breakfast, we don't have to, start over in 5 days because we screwed up, or sometimes, it's like people get in the mindset of, oh, I already had a donut, I might as well have another one, and then I'll have pizza for dinner and ice cream, and so we kind of go in that spiraling mindset. So teaching them it's okay if we had a donut for breakfast, right? Now let's try to make the rest of the day better. We can still actually stay on track even though we ate a donut.
I would like to switch gears for a second as we start to wind down our awesome talk here and talk about a concept and theory out there called the set point theory, because I'm just curious what your uh, view is on this. And just for our viewers' sake, and I'm kind of cheating here a little bit because I want to make sure that I'm accurate and don't miss any points. For viewers' sake, for anyone who isn't familiar or doesn't even know, never heard of this before, the set point theory is a theory that basically states that the body has this built-in weight control mechanism that determines either how much fat it should carry and or what your weight is ultimately going to be. And in the research world, there's studies, as with just about everything, that support it, and then studies that don't necessarily support it. But the set point is kind of like a thermostat for the body weight, in that the body tends to defend this weight even in the face of a caloric surplus or deficit. In other words, just as a thermostat regulates temperature to remain at a set level, the set point theory suggests that the body will use hunger, your metabolism, and other physiological mechanisms to regulate and maintain a certain weight. And although everyone's weight might fluctuate a bit, the set point theory also suggests that the body will resist long-term changes and will always work to return to this set point weight. So if they go below, they might feel hungrier and their metabolism might slow down to conserve energy. Or if they're above, they might feel less hungry and their metabolism might speed up, et cetera, et cetera. But to really sum this up, as I mentioned before, not really everyone in the scientific community agrees with this set point theory, or at least the implications of it. Critics argue that the modern environment, with its abundance of calorie dense foods and sedentary lifestyles, plays a significant role in the weight gain, which might overpower any innate set point. And then lastly, and this kind of leans towards my biased view, is that the fact that we have successful weight loss maintainers, so the success of some people in losing weight and maintaining their weight loss, suggests that it's possible to overcome or reset the set point. With all that as a background, definitely curious. I would like to get in a little mini discussion on this, and what are your views on about this?
Yeah. So, I think that there's some truth to it, but I also think, kind of like you said, with I think the set point depends on your habits and your lifestyle. Okay. So, if I'm coming from a background of, doing too much cardio and maybe being on a diet that I am all or nothing, that it's like, okay, I'm going to diet hard for 6 months. I decrease my calorie, or not 6 months, even 6 weeks, probably decrease my calories super low. Right. But when I probably lose some weight, not just fat, also muscle, kind of throw that in there. But as I do that, now the diet's over and now I go back to whatever I was doing before, right? And I generally gain the weight back. And so for that person, it's going to be, maybe in the 6 weeks they get down, to, we'll say 140. 140 is their set point. Okay. They get down to 140. Right. And so now they feel good. They feel like maybe they could lose a little bit more, but they can't do it for longer than 6 weeks. Right. So they go back to doing, what they were doing before. They gain the weight back. They start another diet, they maybe get down to 140 again. And so in their mind, like 140 is their set point, right? Where if we can change and manipulate their habits in terms of how they're getting there, I think that we can manipulate what that set point is. So by in changing their habits, like including, like I said, more resistance training. So now we're building muscle, we're helping them get that lean tone look that they want. We're going to build muscle, which is going to help increase their metabolism and overall help them burn more fat and probably be able to change whatever that set point is. So I think also, this is why we look at a lot more things than just the number on the scale too, because looking at progress pictures and body measurements, you can have two pictures and be 140 in both pictures, but have a completely different physique in terms of, in this picture, I've built muscle, right? I've built muscle. I look leaner in this picture. This picture, I look overweight, but I weigh 140 in both. So I think, I'm kind of going two different directions with that, but I think we can manipulate what that set point is by changing their habits of how they're trying to change their physique.
Man, I would love to hear Thomas's view on this, but let me just interject and quickly say that I agree with you 100%. The whole cliche that things like your genetics and biology and the environment and stuff like that load the gun, but it's really your behavior that pulls the trigger. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what you're alluding to. And so, to me, it's most. I just feel strongly that we have a very either uninformed and or misinformed society, and that and that's, I can just tell in the short time that we have spoken, that what you do is you educate your consumers. And if people were just more educated on what they can do to adjust these things, and then we can just start getting rid of these misconceptions and create success. So yes, I agree with you 1,000,000%. There's all kinds of things that are fighting against us.
Mhm.
But when you change your behavior and start taking personal responsibility, and I love, again, going back to whole track and macros and stuff like that. Like that is just such an important part of this whole thing, because like you mentioned, before you track the macros and you didn't know and you were uninformed, you look at a certain food and you don't have a clue how many calories. So you're kind of blindly eating it from a calorie standpoint. But now all of a sudden you educated them, and for the rest of their lives, they're going to look at that potato or whatever the case may be, and they're going to be like, oh, that has such and such calories in it.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I absolutely love it. And I agree with you 100%.
I also want to throw in, just in terms of educating and really helping people see too, like this journey takes time, and which is why we want to step away from the yo-yo type diets that, again, unfortunately the world throws in their face, right? But it makes us keep expecting that we should reach our goal in 6 to 12 weeks, or, you know, even 6 months. And sometimes that's just not reality, and it's going to take longer. So I try to encourage people. Obviously, it depends on where you're at, what your goal is, but you got to look at it like a year-long journey, or you're just going to be disappointed if you expect it to happen in 6 or 12 weeks, because it's not supposed to. And if you're doing something that's not sustainable, like, why are you doing it? Because it's just going to continue in this roller coaster. So realizing that the journey takes longer, but it's better for the journey to take longer so that you actually get to the other side and don't have to continue on the roller coaster.
And something that I say all the time on that note is that if it's not sustainable, it's because it wasn't optimal. And if we just put people on an optimal program, then from an exercise standpoint, they're going to realize they don't need to hop from one program to the next, or from one challenge to the next. They can be put on something that's lifelong. And then the same with diet. Let's stop thinking about the fact that it needs to be, you know, one diet. This diet didn't work, so I'm going to hop to the next.
Yeah.
Hopping is not sustainable, but developing lifelong habits and being educated and sustaining, I'm sorry, and changing your behavior is sustainable. So I absolutely love it.
You know, if I was to add anything about this set point theory conversation from my perspective, I so often think of things from the behavior change theory standpoint, and aiding people through behavior change, and changing behaviors like what you've learned about nutrition and exercise across a lifetime is messy. It doesn't fit well into a research study. The solution is not always uniform. And when we try to provide one intervention for people to see if it fixes weight over a long period of time, it's very hard to find something that is universally going to work every time. And, you know, I don't necessarily, I am not an authority on the physiological underpinnings of why set point theory is accepted. I think there probably is some validity to that. However, what I'll say is that, you know, Jeff, I lean on your side that there are examples of people losing and sustaining weight over time, or gaining muscle mass and losing fat mass. You know, one of the most simple studies in the 1990s, the CDC was trying to prove whether the diabetes prevention program was something that could work to help people with prediabetes prevent developing type 2 diabetes. And if you've ever looked at the content of the diabetes prevention program, it is not monumental. It's really very simple stuff. And one of the most powerful things that they did in this research was that they had participants on a weekly basis for the first several months, but throughout the entire program over 2 years, self-report their weight and their physical activity. And then they get in a support group and talk with one another. Again, not crazy things, but simple things that everybody in that group could do. And what they found with that group of people is that they lost and sustained that weight loss over a long period of time, and were much more likely to not develop type 2 diabetes. I think the idea of behavior change being messy, and can we point to one specific thing that works for everyone? Probably not. But when we think about simple things like you've talked about, Kelli, can we just identify what people's calorie intake is and provide just small coaching strategies for people? So often it has to start there with the simple, small changes, and sometimes it does have to be individualized, and that is the power to me and the value of coaching. So I don't know if you guys want to say anything in addition to that before we wrap up, but those are my thoughts, Jeff, since you were curious.
That's right. I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Love your addition.
Kelli, I'm curious, because we spent most of our talk today talking about weight loss, but I know that isn't necessarily the entirety of Kelsby Fit. I'd love it if you could just tell us more about your business, and just tell us anything that we should know.
Okay. So, you know, I'm a coach on the team, but we've grown so much. I also have 4 coaches that work for me. So we have 4 coaches. We also have, like I said, we work with a hormone and gut health specialist. And then, we have someone who does, you know, all the tech stuff that I don't know about. So, you know, I would say the majority of women that come to us want to lose weight, right? We do have a few that I think sometimes they're our favorite clients, where they just want some body recomposition, which is great. So then we work on muscle building and increasing their calories and getting stronger. So those are really fun. They're all fun, but the majority, you know, I like to say, like I said earlier, we like to help women lose weight forever, eating the most amount of food possible instead of being stuck in this restrictive mindset that just, you know, doesn't get us where we want to go. So the majority of women that come to us, I would say, are people that have a history of yo-yo dieting. So we really help women try to get out of the yo-yo dieting, obtain forever fat loss without having to give up their favorite foods, you know, and teaching them how, like, it's okay to have pizza night with your kids, ice cream, you know, a glass of wine with your husband at night. So really trying to teach them balance to be able to be a successful mom, working mom, and also feel good in their skin, because a lot of women don't, and they, you know, they have trouble, you know, looking in the mirror, trying on clothes, or, you know, having energy to play with their kids, and they just feel like it's not in the cards for them. And so really, like, trying to teach them that it is, and they can have both worlds, and they don't have to feel miserable just because they're trying to lose weight or not be able to enjoy life while they're trying to lose weight. So we really like to help them find the middle ground. And we work with a lot of healthcare professionals too. I'll just kind of throw that out there, is, you know, so we know the busy life of seeing patients and trying to, you know, exercise and lose weight and be a mom. It's a lot. It can be a lot, but we teach them doable ways to do that, instead of feeling like, if I do that, I have to eat 1,200 calories and work out 6 days a week. That's not reality. So really teaching them the balance, and improving their relationship with food is a huge piece of it too. And, you know, fat loss comes with all of that. So it's good.
Kelli, this is a virtual coaching business, right? You accept clients from anywhere,
Correct. Yep.
potentially.
Yeah.
Jeff, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just gonna say that I love it, and what you're doing is obviously critical. And since I agree with everything you said, I I obviously think that you're doing it the right way. So yeah, absolutely love it. So as we wrap this up, do you want to just tell the audience, how they can follow you, and where you can be found on social media, and anything else related to that?
Yeah. On Instagram, it's Kelsby Fit. So KELZBFIT. I do have a Facebook group. The name is way too long to tell you what it is on here, but maybe you can put the link in your whatever information you have. If you search just Kelli Brower on Facebook, you'll also find me. Can add me as a friend or reach out there, and I can get you in our group. But we have a free Facebook group where we have lots of free resources. We do a training in there every single week on some sort of topic. So that's free and available for anybody to join.
Awesome. So thanks so much, Thomas. Thanks for being here. And Kelli, it was a great conversation, and thanks for being our special guest today.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. You too.
Do you need assistance in connecting with a fitness professional in your local area or virtually to add this connection to your patient services? If so, please email mrfinstitute.org@gmail.com. Please also remember to check out mrfinstitute.org for more information on how to learn more about the education we offer and to stay current with our podcast series. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.